My name is Catherine Hale, and I'm 32. When I look back now, I can still hear the sound first, the soft chatter of friends, the clink of plastic cups, the warm music humming under everything like a promise that this day would be gentle. It was supposed to be a celebration, a baby shower, a rare moment where the world would stop spinning around other people's drama and finally settle, just for a few hours, on the life my boyfriend and I were about to bring into it. My boyfriend had watched me for weeks, silently taking on extra errands, letting me nap when my body begged, rubbing my back when the stress hit like nausea. He wanted this day to be perfect for me. I wanted it to be peaceful for him. We booked the venue, ordered the cake, coordinated with friends, did everything we could to make it feel like something sacred, something untouched by the chaos my family had mastered. And then Nicole walked in. My younger sister never entered a room quietly. She arrived like she was late on purpose, like she wanted everyone to look up just to confirm she still mattered. Loud, smiling, eyes bright, with that specific kind of excitement she got when she knew she was about to do something she'd later pretend was an accident. I remember watching her move through the crowd without greeting my boyfriend first, without even looking at me like a sister who was happy for me. She drifted, no, glided, toward the cake table, like the cake was calling her name. The cake was beautiful. 3 tiers, decorated with tiny fondant shoes and alphabet blocks, centered like a crown on the display. People had been taking pictures of it all afternoon. It looked like joy. Nicole didn't stop to admire it. She brushed past the table, hip-checking it hard enough that I saw the stand wobble before my mind could catch up to what my eyes were witnessing. The cake tipped, then fell, then hit the floor with a dull thud that sucked every breath out of the room. The top tier rolled away, frosting smeared across the carpet like a bruise. Silence swallowed everything. People froze mid-conversation, mouths half open, eyes wide. My boyfriend's face drained so fast it scared me, like he'd been slapped. I felt something cold move through my body, a quiet shock that didn't even give me the dignity of anger yet, just disbelief. Nicole stood there with a smug little smile, her chin lifted as if she'd just delivered the funniest line in the world. "Guess you're not the only one who can get attention," she said, like it was clever. A couple relatives laughed nervously, the way people do when they're afraid of being the next target. And then my mother, my own mother, let out a full laugh, not a startled giggle, a real laugh. The kind that tells you, clearly, whose side she's on without having to say it. "She's just joking," Mom said, shaking her head like the destruction on the floor was harmless fun. I didn't say anything. I didn't even look at Nicole. I walked out to the kitchen, grabbed a drink with hands that felt too steady for what I was feeling, and let the sound of people cleaning up fade into the background. Everyone moved like it was normal, like I was supposed to smile and accept it, like I was supposed to be grateful my sister had shown up at all. But inside me, something was already hardening into a decision. Because Nicole's move wasn't clumsy, it wasn't an accident, it was payback. She'd been holding a grudge ever since I told her I wouldn't help her get the line of credit she wanted. In her mind, I wasn't her sister. I was her financial assistant on call, ready to fix whatever mess she made or fund whatever new idea popped into her head. And for years, I played that role without even realizing how deep the trap went. I helped with her rent when she forgot to budget. I paid off her credit card debt more than once. I co-signed her car because the dealership was being unfair. Every time I said yes, my mom called me a good sister. Every time I said no, Nicole acted like I was betraying her. The baby shower was supposed to be different. My boyfriend and I wanted it to be a celebration. A rare day where the focus was on our growing family, not Nicole's hunger for attention. But the second she walked in, I knew she was going to make herself the center of the room. And when she knocked that cake down, I realized something darker. She didn't just want attention. She wanted to remind me she could still take something from me in front of everyone and leave me standing there expected to forgive. That night, after my boyfriend went to bed, I opened my laptop. Nicole had been counting on me for the down payment on her condo purchase, something she'd already been bragging about, telling people it was secured. She talked like it was a done deal, like my money was already hers, like my effort was already spent. I moved every penny back into my personal account. Then I called the leasing company for her car and put a stop on the payments I'd been making. Payments under my name, my account, my responsibility. It wasn't about making her feel bad. It was about cutting off the idea that she could keep using me without consequence. And while I stared at the confirmation emails, I felt something else settle in too. Something heavy, something honest. This was only the first step. because the next morning she was going to find out that I wasn't done. My phone started buzzing before the sun was even up. 5 calls in a row from Nicole, then 3 from my mom. I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't in the mood to hear crying, excuses, or that fake shock Nicole used when she got caught in something she couldn't talk her way out of. When I came downstairs, my boyfriend was already in the kitchen scrolling through his phone with that look he gets when he's reading something ridiculous. He didn't even need to say it. I knew Nicole had found her way into his messages too. Sure enough, he looked up and said, "Nicole's texting me nonstop. She's saying something about the condo money disappearing and her car company threatening her. She wants you to call her right now." I poured myself coffee and said, "I'll get to it later." 2 minutes later, the texts started coming in for me. Long paragraphs in all caps, accusing me of sabotaging her future, ruining her chance at stability, destroying her trust. She said she counted on me to come through like I always did, and pulling the money was cruel. I noticed something that made my jaw tighten. She didn't mention the cake, not once. I ignored her for the rest of the morning. That was when the banging started. Not a polite knock. Full-on pounding on my front door like the house was on fire. I opened it to see Nicole standing there with her hair a mess, wearing pajama pants and an oversized hoodie like she'd rolled straight out of bed and into a tantrum. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside and started throwing accusations before I could even close the door. "You can't just take back money you promised me," she said. "The lease is in your name, so you have to pay it. You're ruining everything over some little joke." I let her keep going. Nicole was always good at talking circles around people, twisting things until she sounded like the victim. But when she finally stopped to breathe, I told her the truth. "I never promised you anything," I said. "What I did promise, mostly to myself, is that I'm done being your personal bailout fund." Her voice cracked instantly, like a switch flipped. The wounded routine, the soft tremble, the eyes that tried to look innocent. She said she was in trouble, that I didn't understand how bad things were, that I was making her feel abandoned. And then she glanced over my shoulder at my boyfriend, like she expected him to shame me into giving in. That was when the front door opened again. Our grandfather walked in without knocking, holding a paper bag with breakfast sandwiches. He'd heard about the baby shower from one of my cousins and decided to stop by. He froze for a second, taking in the scene. Nicole in my living room, half yelling, half crying, acting like she was being murdered by boundaries. He set the bag down on the counter and asked one question, calm as stone. "Do you have any idea how many years Catherine's been covering for you?" Nicole tried to deflect, said it wasn't about that, said she was counting on me just this once. But Grandpa cut her off. He told her her behavior at the shower was disgraceful. He told her he was done watching her take advantage of me. And then he said the sentence that finally made Nicole's face change. "If you or your mother ever pull something like that again," he said, "you'll get nothing from my estate. No money, no property, no help." For the first time in my life, I saw Nicole truly speechless. She just stared at him, and for once she didn't have a comeback. She left a few minutes later without another word. I watched her get into her car and drive away, and I knew something with a certainty that made my stomach twist. Nicole never just gives up, and when she went quiet after that, it wasn't peace. It was a warning. Nicole went silent for 3 days, which for her wasn't a sign of peace. It was a warning. I'd seen this pattern my whole life. She never stayed quiet unless she was working on her next move, building a story, collecting allies, sharpening her knives where nobody could see. And while those 3 days passed, my house felt different. Not louder, not chaotic. Just tense, like the air was waiting for a door to slam. My boyfriend tried to keep things normal. He made breakfast, asked if I wanted tea instead of coffee, rubbed my shoulders when I sat too long. But every time my phone lit up, a part of me tightened anyway. Because it wasn't just Nicole, it was the network she always pulled behind her like a curtain. Mom, relatives, cousins, anyone willing to listen to her version first. The first sign came from my cousin Laura. She called late in the evening, almost whispering, like she didn't want to be overheard. "I just got pulled into a group chat," she said. "Nicole made one. You're not in it, but Mom is, and a few other relatives." I sat up straighter on the couch. My boyfriend looked at me, reading my face, then quietly turned the TV down without being asked. Laura kept going. Nicole started it with this long voice note. She's crying, like full tears, talking about how you blindsided her by pulling back money she was depending on and freezing her car lease. She said she got humiliated in front of her real estate agent, that she can't get to work, that her life is falling apart. I closed my eyes for a second because I could already hear Nicole's voice in my head. trembling, dramatic, careful to sound wounded but never responsible. And Mom, I asked? Laura exhaled, right there backing her up, saying you overreacted, still calling what happened at the shower a harmless joke. My stomach turned, not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. Then Laura's voice dropped even lower, and then your mom said something that made me angry. She said you owed Nicole for all the years Nicole's been there for you. The words hit like a slap. Owed her, I repeated. Laura gave a small, bitter laugh. I asked for one example, just one, and she dodged it. Started talking about how family sticks together and people shouldn't keep score. Of course she did. That was always the tactic. Gather a circle of people who only knew half the story, turn it into poor Nicole, then send them my way, like a wave, pressuring me into caving so the family could go back to pretending everything was fine. I stared at the wall, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. My boyfriend's hand found mine. He didn't speak because he didn't need to. The silence between us said the same thing we'd both been thinking since the cake hit the carpet. They're doing it again. Laura hesitated. I'm telling you because it's getting ugly. Nicole's convincing people you stole from her. That was when I opened my eyes. Because stealing was a different word than selfish. Stealing was a word that could follow you into courtrooms, workplaces, family gatherings. Stealing was a word Nicole would use if she thought it would force me to panic. I thanked Laura, told her to stay out of it as much as she could, and hung up. For a moment, I just sat there listening to the quiet hum of our house. The nursery door was down the hall. The baby's room we'd been building with careful hands, careful love. I felt my child's future sitting on my chest like weight. And that's when my phone rang again. Grandpa. His voice was calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm that told me he'd already decided how this was going to go. Catherine, he said, Nicole came to my place today. I stood up immediately. My boyfriend rose with me, like we were bracing for impact. Grandpa continued. She brought a folder. Evidence, she called it. Screenshots of texts, bank transfer receipts, a printout of her car lease. She tried to make it look like you broke a binding agreement. I felt heat rise in my face, sharp and sudden. She's lying. I know, Grandpa said, and the certainty in his voice steadied me like a hand on my back. I let her talk for about 3 minutes. Then I cut her off. I could picture it. The way Grandpa sat at his kitchen table, the way his eyes didn't flinch. Nicole in front of him, crying, pleading, spinning. Grandpa's voice didn't change. I told her point blank she has no entitlement to your money. I told her she embarrassed herself and the family at that shower. And I told her the story she's trying to build is only proving my point. My throat tightened. What did she say? He paused. She cried, left in tears. But I knew Nicole. Tears never meant surrender. Tears meant regrouping. Grandpa lowered his voice slightly, like he was leaning closer to the phone. And I reminded her what I said in your living room. Keep this up, and she and your mother will get nothing from my estate. When the call ended, I sat back down slowly, like my legs didn't fully trust the floor. My boyfriend knelt in front of me, hands on my knees. You okay? He asked softly. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I felt protected. But protection didn't erase the sick feeling of realizing how quickly Nicole would poison the family if she thought it would make me pay. 2 days later, another sign came. I got a call from the leasing company. The representative sounded polite but strained, like she'd been dealing with someone loud and relentless. We just wanted to inform you, she said, that Nicole attempted to contact us directly. She claimed the freeze on payments was a mistake and that you acted without her permission. I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. And? I asked. She was told that since the account and payment arrangement are under your name, there's nothing she can do. She became upset, threatened legal action, then hung up. When that door closed, Nicole ran straight to Mom's house. And that's when the online crusade began. Cryptic posts, Facebook updates about family who betray you when you're at your lowest, quotes about people who pretend to be supportive until you need them most. They didn't name me outright, but they didn't need to. It was obvious enough that messages started coming in within hours. Friends asking if everything was okay. A distant aunt texting, I hope you two can work it out. Someone else writing, Nicole seems really hurt. I stared at the screen, feeling something strange rise through the anger. Not guilt, clarity. Because I could feel the shift. The sympathy they were fishing for wasn't landing the way they thought it would. A few relatives messaged me privately, quiet messages that said more than they dared say publicly. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I've seen Nicole do this before. Your mom always protects her, doesn't she? And while Nicole and Mom were busy performing their pity campaign, Grandpa was moving in a completely different direction. He called early on a Thursday morning. "Come over," he said. "Something important needs to be discussed." He didn't say much more than that, but something in his voice made my stomach drop. Calm, but weighted, like he wasn't asking for a visit, like he was calling me into a decision. When we arrived, Grandpa was at the kitchen table with a stack of papers neatly lined up. Beside him sat a man I'd never seen before. The man stood and introduced himself as Grandpa's attorney. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was legal. Permanent. Grandpa didn't ease into it. He pushed a set of documents toward me. An updated version of his will. I started skimming, my eyes moving fast, expecting minor changes, small adjustments, something symbolic. Then my pulse jumped. Nicole and my mother's names were gone entirely. Not just from cash assets, from everything. Properties, investments, trusts, every cent, every piece of real estate, every share of stock, everything now bypassed them. The only beneficiaries left were me, my boyfriend, and a trust fund for our unborn child. I looked up sharply. "Grandpa, I didn't ask for this." He shook his head once, firm. "You didn't have to ask. I've watched this family treat you like a resource, not a relative. I'm done letting them get away with it." My boyfriend's hand found the back of my chair, steady and quiet. I felt him there like an anchor. Grandpa leaned forward. "I want you to understand something, Catherine. They're not angry because you took something from them. They're angry because you stopped letting them take from you." Those words stayed in my chest the whole drive home. I left his house thinking that was the end game. Nicole and Mom would have to accept they'd gone too far, that there were consequences now that didn't bend to guilt or tears. But Nicole never accepted anything. That weekend, she appeared in my driveway unannounced, and the version of her who stepped out of the car looked softer than I'd seen her in years. She smiled. She carried 2 coffees like she was bringing peace. Her voice was quiet when she said, "I just want to talk." My boyfriend gave me a look that said he didn't buy it for a second, but I let Nicole inside anyway. Not because I trusted her, because I wanted to see what she'd do when she realized I wasn't afraid of her tantrums anymore. She started slow, asked how things had been, asked how I was feeling, asked if we were ready for the baby. Her sweetness was almost convincing, almost, until she shifted. "So," she said casually, stirring her coffee like she had no agenda at all, "I heard Grandpa's been making changes to his finances." I didn't respond. She kept going, tilting her head with fake concern. "I just want to make sure he's not being taken advantage of. He's older, you know. People can influence him." There it was. Fishing. I gave her nothing. Short answers. No details. No confirmation. Not even a hint that anything had changed. Her smile tightened. The softness cracked for just a second. She left looking frustrated, but I thought maybe that was the end of it. 2 days later, Grandpa called again. This time he was laughing. Not because it was funny, because he couldn't believe the audacity. "Nicole called my lawyer," he said, pretending to be you. My stomach dropped. "She gave your address," Grandpa continued, voice sharpening. "Your phone number. Said she needed a copy of the most recent legal documents for personal review." I felt cold travel down my spine. Did he give her anything? "No," Grandpa said. He played along long enough to confirm her identity, then ended the call and notified me immediately. My boyfriend paced once across the kitchen, jaw tight, then stopped, forcing himself to breathe. Grandpa didn't sound surprised. He sounded resolved. "I'm not letting that slide." The following Sunday, he called a family meeting. No one knew exactly why, just that it was important. Everyone showed up curious, maybe even nervous, like people always are when they sense a storm but don't know where it will land. When we were all seated in Grandpa's living room, he started talking, and he didn't hold back. He told the entire family about the baby shower incident, about Nicole knocking the cake to the floor, about me pulling the condo down payment and freezing the car lease payments, about the warning he'd given Nicole and Mom in my living room. Then he dropped the bomb. He told them Nicole had tried to impersonate me to access his will. The room went still. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. 2 cousins who'd been loudly defending Nicole online stared at the floor. Nicole sat rigid in her chair, cheeks flushed, eyes darting like she was searching for a new story fast enough to save her. Mom kept her arms crossed, face tight, but even she didn't try to argue. Grandpa finished with one final statement, and his voice hit the room like a thunderclap. "If anyone in this family sides with Nicole in trying to manipulate Catherine," he said, "you're cut off too. No exceptions." That sentence landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't just about money. It was about exposure. Nicole had lost more than my help. She'd lost the safety net she thought she could always fall back on, and now she was isolated in a way I don't think she'd ever experienced. I watched her sit there, frozen, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not remorse, not love, calculation. And I knew her well enough to understand the truth before she even stood up. She wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. And the next move she made was going to be the most desperate and reckless of her life. Nicole vanished after the family meeting. No calls, no texts, no vague posts, no tearful voice notes sent through other people's phones. For most families, that kind of silence would have been a relief, a sign that things had finally settled. But with Nicole, silence was never peace. It was planning. The first few days after the meeting felt almost unreal. My phone stayed quiet. My mother didn't call. No cousins reached out asking me to be the bigger person. The house felt lighter, like something heavy had been dragged out without anyone announcing it. My boyfriend noticed it too. "This is the longest stretch of calm we've had in years," he said one night as we sat on the couch, my feet propped on his lap. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But there was a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. "She doesn't let go," I said quietly. "She just waits." And I was right. The first crack came 2 weeks later, in the most invasive way possible. I was at work when my boyfriend called. His voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath it that made my pulse jump. "Nicole just walked into the house," he said. "What?" I sat up straight. "Did she knock?" "No," he replied. "She came through the side door, like she lives here." My chest tightened. "Why?" "She says she's here to get her things." I frowned. "She doesn't have anything here." "That's what I told her," he said. Then she said she wanted to check on the baby's room. My heart started racing. "Is she still there?" "Yes," he said. "And Catherine, she's taking pictures." That was all I needed to hear. "Hang up and call the police," I said. "Now!" By the time I pulled into the driveway, a patrol car was already parked out front. Nicole was sitting on the curb with her arms folded, talking to the officers like she was the one who'd been wronged. Her posture was relaxed, almost smug, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head. She glanced up when she saw me and rolled her eyes dramatically. The officer stepped toward me. "She claims part of the money you pulled back belongs to her," he said. "She says she was documenting evidence that you spent it on yourself." I almost laughed, but the situation was too serious to find humor in. "I want her off my property," I said, "and I want it clear she's not welcome back without permission." The officer nodded and turned back to Nicole. She muttered something under her breath about getting her lawyer involved as she stood up. As she walked away, she shot me one last look. Not anger, not sadness. Defiance. 3 days later, I got an email from a law office. Nicole had tried to open a civil case against me for misappropriation of funds. The irony was almost impressive, but her confidence collapsed fast. The moment her lawyer reviewed the actual financial history, years of payments going one way, no contracts, no agreements, no evidence of anything owed, he dropped her as a client. The case died before it even breathed. That should have been the end. It wasn't. A week later, Grandpa called me early in the morning. His voice was sharp, edged with something I hadn't heard from him before. "She came here last night," he said. My stomach sank. "Nicole?" "Yes," he replied, just after midnight, pounding on the door like the house was on fire. He told me she cried, begged, not apologized, begged. She said she'd learned her lesson, said she just needed a little help to get back on track, and when Grandpa told her to leave, she refused. She said she wasn't going anywhere until we worked something out, he said. "So what did you do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I called the police," Grandpa said flatly. When they arrived, Nicole was still sitting on his porch, still trying to convince him to change his mind. The next morning, Grandpa said something that stayed with me. "She's burned every bridge she had," he said. "You've stopped being her lifeline. I've stopped being her safety net. And the rest of the family finally sees her for what she is." He paused. "All she has left now is stubbornness." From that point on, her attempts grew smaller. A manipulative text here, a guilt-soaked email there. Sometimes she tried to play the concerned sister, asking about the baby in an overly sweet tone, only to slide a request for money into the second paragraph. It was like watching someone realize, slowly and painfully, that their old tricks no longer worked. And for the first time in years, my boyfriend and I didn't feel like there was a storm hanging over us. Months passed without any major incidents. For a while, I thought maybe Nicole had finally accepted that the free ride was over. But the truth was darker. She hadn't gone quiet because she'd moved on. She'd gone quiet because she was waiting for the perfect moment to force her way back in. That moment came on the day my son was born. It was early morning. My body was exhausted, raw, trembling with adrenaline and relief. My boyfriend sat beside me in the hospital room, his hand wrapped around mine, his eyes wet as he looked at our newborn like the world had just restarted. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but I was running on instinct and thought it might be a nurse or another department. Instead, it was a woman from the hospital's front desk. "There's someone in the lobby insisting she's your sister," she said carefully. "She says she needs to see you immediately." My chest tightened. "Do not let her up," I said, "under any circumstances." 15 minutes later, a nurse came in looking rattled. "She tried to talk her way past security," the nurse said. "She claimed she was here to sign paperwork for the baby. She also said you might not be in a condition to handle it yourself." My hands started shaking. When that didn't work, Nicole demanded to speak to hospital administration about medical neglect. Security escorted her out, but the damage wasn't in the attempt. It was in what came next. That evening, Grandpa showed up at the hospital holding an envelope. Inside was a letter from his attorney. He told me he had officially removed Nicole and my mother, not just from his will, but from every trust, every life insurance policy, every legal designation connected to him. "I kept it quiet before," he said. "I hoped they might change." Then he looked at my son, sleeping peacefully, and his voice hardened. "After what she tried to pull today, I want this known." And then he said something I didn't expect at all. "I contacted your boyfriend's parents," Grandpa said. "I told them everything. Not just about today, about all of it." My breath caught. "Why?" "Because I want you to know something," he said gently. "You're not standing alone anymore. Even if they try to come back, you won't be unprotected." That hit harder than I expected. From that day forward, the family dynamic became unrecognizable. Nicole and my mother weren't included in gatherings, weren't consulted, weren't informed, not out of cruelty, but because trust had finally run out. Relatives who once defended them now avoided them entirely. Messages stopped being passed along. Manipulation lost its audience. Nicole had always believed she could push boundaries and still get her way. She thought patience was weakness. That generosity was something she could drain without consequence. But she finally learned what happens when you cross the line too many times. You end up exactly where you never thought you'd be. Alone. I thought that was the ending. I was wrong. Because a week after my son was born, when I finally believed the worst was behind us, someone knocked on my door. Not a relative. Not the police. A man in a suit. A process server. And the papers he handed me proved one thing with brutal clarity. Nicole wasn't finished. The papers felt heavier than they should have. I stood in the doorway holding them while the process server walked back down the path like he hadn't just dropped a grenade into my life. My boyfriend closed the door slowly behind him, then turned to look at me. I didn't need to read his face to know what he was thinking. She found another way in. Nicole had filed for a restraining order against me. The allegations were printed in cold, official language, but they might as well have been fiction. She claimed I'd been harassing her, spreading false rumors, threatening her safety. She painted herself as afraid, cornered, desperate for protection from the very person who had spent years protecting her. I sat at the kitchen table and read the pages again, my hands shaking. It didn't matter how absurd it was. Seeing my name attached to accusations like that felt like a punch to the chest. When I called the court clerk to understand what was happening, the rest of the picture fell into place. Alongside the restraining order, Nicole had also filed a small claims case demanding reimbursement for the condo down payment and months of car payments, money that had never belonged to her. Court dates were already scheduled. I had to take time off work. I had to hire a lawyer. I had to start pulling together years of bank statements, texts, emails, proof that generosity isn't theft and boundaries aren't abuse. It didn't matter that I had the truth. Truth still cost time, money, energy. And that was exactly what Nicole wanted. The stress crept in quietly. Sleepless nights, short breaths, moments where I'd catch myself staring at nothing while my son slept in the next room, his tiny chest rising and falling, unaware of the storm circling him. 2 days before the first hearing, Grandpa called. His voice was heavy in a way that scared me more than anything Nicole had done. "I've been diagnosed with pneumonia," he said. "The doctors are hopeful, but I'm not bouncing back as fast as they'd like." My heart dropped. "Are you okay?" "I will be," he said, but the pause before it told me he wasn't sure. Then he told me something else. Nicole had been showing up at his property at night, banging on the door, demanding to be let in. He'd changed the locks, installed cameras. It was the first time I heard something like defeat in his voice. And that scared me. When the court day finally arrived, Nicole walked in looking polished and calm. Her hair was perfect. Her clothes were conservative, intentional. She looked like the kind of woman people believe without question. She told her story smoothly, carefully, twisting details just enough to sound plausible. The judge listened, took notes, asked questions. My lawyer dismantled most of her claims piece by piece, showed the bank records, the one-sided payments, the lack of any agreement. Still, the ruling didn't bring relief. Some of Nicole's accusations were dismissed. Others were set aside for a longer hearing. It wasn't a win. It wasn't a loss. It was limbo. And limbo was expensive. As we walked out of the courthouse, Nicole glanced back at me with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Not because she'd won, but because she'd succeeded in pulling me back into her orbit. That night, I sat in my son's nursery, holding him while he slept. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp. The world felt very far away. And that's when the truth I'd been avoiding finally settled in. Sometimes people like Nicole don't need to win outright to do damage. All they need is to keep you fighting long enough that you lose in other ways. Time, peace, focus, presence. And in that moment, holding my child, I understood something with painful clarity. She had taken something from me I couldn't get back. Peace. For a long time after that night, I told myself the worst was over. The restraining order hadn't gone through. The small claims case was bleeding out slowly under evidence Nicole couldn't explain away. Grandpa was recovering, slowly but steadily. My boyfriend and I fell into a fragile routine. Feedings, naps, quiet conversations whispered over our son's crib. From the outside, it looked like survival. From the inside, it felt like vigilance. Every knock at the door made my chest tighten. Every unknown number made my pulse jump. Even when nothing happened, I felt like I was bracing for impact, like my body had learned a new language and forgot how to turn it off. Nicole had gone quiet again. But this time it wasn't dramatic. No posts, no messages, no attempts at contact. And that scared me more than her tantrums ever had. Because I knew her well enough to understand something I hadn't wanted to admit before. Nicole didn't run on emotion. She ran on opportunity. And when opportunity disappeared, she waited. Weeks passed, then a month. The second court date came and went. More of her claims collapsed under scrutiny. The judge warned her attorney, her new one, that frivolous filings would not be tolerated. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. One evening, after putting our son down, I sat on the edge of the bed and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed without forcing it. Not a polite smile. Not a breathy exhale meant to reassure everyone I was fine. A real laugh. Nicole hadn't taken my money. She hadn't taken my home. She hadn't taken my family's support anymore. But she had taken something quieter. My sense of safety. The day it finally ended didn't come with a bang. It came with a letter. A thin envelope from the court, stating that Nicole's remaining claims had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. No apology, no accountability, just a procedural end to a story that had cost me more than it ever cost her. I sat at the table holding the paper while my boyfriend read it over my shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. I nodded. But the truth was, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like exhaustion. Grandpa came by later that week. He moved slower now, leaned heavier on his cane, but his eyes were clear. He held our son for a long time, rocking gently, like he was memorizing the weight of him. "She won't try again," he said finally. I looked up. "How do you know?" "Because there's nothing left for her to take," he said, "and she doesn't know how to exist without that." He was right. Nicole didn't disappear because she healed. She disappeared because she was exposed. She lost the audience, lost the leverage, lost the ability to rewrite reality in rooms full of people willing to believe her. And my mother? She stayed silent. Not because she understood, but because defending Nicole now meant losing everyone else. That silence was its own kind of ending. Months later, I was pushing my son in his stroller through a quiet park when I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Stillness. Not happiness, not joy, just peace. And I realized something that felt both devastating and freeing. Nicole had always thought power meant control, that love meant access, that family meant entitlement. But she was wrong. Power was the ability to walk away and not be dragged back. Family was the people who protected your child when you were too tired to fight. And love was the quiet that came after the chaos finally stopped knocking. Nicole wanted attention. She got it. She wanted control. She lost it. And in the end, the last thing she took from me wasn't money or time or even trust. It was the illusion that setting boundaries would ever come without a cost. But I'd pay that cost again. Every time. Because peace, real peace, is worth more than being liked, more than being generous, more than being the person who always says yes. And the moment I understood that, I stopped being her sister in the way she needed, and started being the mother my son deserved.